Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 6 of This Side of Heaven. I am Paris.
And I am Caulin. We're your hosts of the podcast. We are a podcast that talks about relationships,
Pop culture.
And life in general, and some other things that are sprinkled in there. Welcome back if you have listened to us before, and if you have not, welcome. We are really happy that you're here. We hope you tune in to this episode and then future episodes. We would greatly appreciate it.
So the topic of today's episode is the big three. And the big three are wow, I cannot talk. The three biggest factors of a relationship that people consider or may not consider, which are money, religion, and politics. So we're going to get into those three in this video.
Big three.
Yeah.
The big three.
So we're going to cover those three topics and give you our thoughts on it.
Yeah. So if you haven't already listened to last week's podcast, it'll be linked up here on YouTube, up in the corner somewhere. It'll probably slide over right about now, and it'll be linked down below in the episode description on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're watching or listening. So if you missed last week's episode, it was a Q&A, just to get to know Paris a little bit better. I grilled you for like an hour.
You didn't really grill me. Chloe said that you didn't really ask any questions.
Yeah, no, I didn't grill. Yeah. I mean, I could have gone a little bit harder, but
you should have. Well, too late now.
Part 2 of the
Paris
Q&A coming real soon, apparently. Yeah, so if you missed last week's episode, I would highly suggest you watch that one, because then you will get a better understanding of who Paris is. I already did mine episode 2, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, episode 2. So if you want to watch that, you can watch that. What else are we missing? If you haven't already, follow, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're watching or listening. It would really help us out. I think our goal is to get a sponsorship here soon. It's one of my goals.
That's one of your goals?
To get a sponsorship, yeah. So hopefully sometime in the future. So elephant in the room, the $50 giveaway, or the $50 gift card giveaway. So we had a few of you do 1 or 2 of the steps, but I think we're just going to simplify it a little bit. So head on over to our Instagram. I will link it really big right here on the screen. Also down in the episode description. But go and follow us on our Instagram, and then pick any one of our posts and just leave a comment. Leave the comment gift card on one of those, and then you'll be entered to win a $50 gift card to any store of your choice. $50. It's just up for grabs, guys. Just go take it. Leave a comment. Follow us on Instagram, This Side of Heaven Pod, at This Side of Heaven Pod. So we would like to give one of you a $50 gift card, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really easy to do.
If not, I'll take the gift card.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
I'm just going to
give it to Winston or Paris. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So please do that. But with all that said,
let's just jump right into it.
We can just jump right into it. I think we're going to go...
Start off with money.
Money first.
Money is number 1 out of the big 3.
Money. Well, money's isn't that the number 1 reason people get divorced? Yeah, money. So, I mean, apparently it's a thing in relationships.
I think when people start dating or when they get married, they don't talk about it. And then it's something that comes up later on. Whether you are a spender, a saver, or just in general, you're not good with money. I think that a lot of people notice that once you either join your bank accounts. I know that some people don't even have a joint bank account. I know that some people still have separate accounts even when they get married. But coming from a background, obviously dependent on your religion, which goes into the next portion of our podcast, but I think dependent on whatever religion you are, the traditional route would be everything that you have or that I have is shared. But not
Right.
everybody thinks
Yeah,
that,
when-
whether you are someone that's established, you own your own company, or you've, grinded to be where you are and say you're a millionaire, and then the person that you're dating or married to doesn't have the same background, or they're not as financially stable as you.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes, like, dependent on when you meet your spouse too, I think that makes a difference in how you address money issues or anything related to money.
I like your outfit, but I like your outfit, by the way.
Thank you.
You look really cute.
I love when Marshalls and TJ Maxx start to put out the spring stuff.
Yeah, I'm like a little distracted. I like
I
it.
just hate winter clothing, so when I start to see stuff,
It's warm out today.
Yeah, as it's not even 70 degrees, but I'm always cold, and I decided to throw on shorts, so that's saying something.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I would agree with you on the money thing, because when you do get married in the Bible, it's like two become one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's you're obviously getting married to that individual. I'm going to marry you, you're going to marry me, but two humans become one, and you're in this partnership, this relationship. But I think in all aspects of life, it's we're called to find someone who's equally yoked, which is, it's actually a term. I don't know if you guys know this, but equally yoked is two oxen that are joined by, actually, I forget the name of but it's that wooden that's attached to their necks, and it has them walk side by side. So equally yoked, a lot of people think it's like an egg, but no, it's not an egg. It's oxen walking, side by side, equally yoked. So, with that being said, I think when you get married, I think all aspects of your life should become equally yoked. And I think just includes money. Just naturally, you get the joint account, and
Yeah, but I think
you talk
sometimes,
about money.
Yeah, I think it has to start with the discussion on how do you spend your money, or, what are, like, sitting down and figuring out what are things that you pay for on a monthly basis, or what are our finances, and what do we have to pay for, and what's coming out of our bank account, so then you can figure out a game plan moving forward. I think even if you have all the money in the world, if you had someone linked to your account that's now joint.
It's all relative too.
Yeah, but still, like, I'm just pointing out the fact that sometimes I feel like when people enter into a relationship and they start sharing that portion of their life, sometimes some individuals can just go a little spend crazy or spend
Overboard.
happy,
Yeah.
and just, I don't know. I just feel like it's different for each couple, but I feel like that is a huge thing that comes up often.
Yeah, and I don't think it really has to be a stress point in any relationship. It's almost like you can treat it as a game, in a sense. It's like, oh, how much money are we spending, and how much do we have left over to go do something fun? Or I don't know if game is the right word. It's a help me out a little bit here. It's like a strategy in life almost, where you're like, oh, we X amount of income per month. Okay, here's what we're spending on expenses, and here's how much we have left over. And then with that leftover, you can be like, oh, we can go on a date night, or we can afford a vacation.
Or you can do what I do. Put it on the credit card.
Yeah, or just put it on the credit card. No, do not
No,
put things
just
on the
kidding.
credit card. You don't want to get into
Yeah,
debt.
you don't want to get into debt too. And I think that's actually another good point too, especially nowadays with how much school costs, and people get into a marriage, and obviously you take on the financial burden that somebody else has. So say you're in debt, like $200,000, then that becomes my debt.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a huge factor as well. I know a lot of people are unable to afford education, which is very common. So a lot of people do have those student loans where they are paying those off for years to come. So I think that also plays a role in the piece when it comes to finance.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I feel like it's more common nowadays to have the student debt. That a lot of people have it. I mean, it's
I would
very
say like
common.
9 out of 10 people do.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's $5,000 or $100,000, some people just. But also, I've heard a lot of students, their parents will make them take out a loan just to develop a line of credit as well, whether that's like
Yeah.
$5,000 or a semester's worth or a year worth. They have done that before because obviously as a student, you don't necessarily start to build credit yet, which I think is important, which no one teach you in that aspect of money, how to build credit and how that's so important in your life, especially when you want to buy a car, buy a house, when you want to do anything together. That holds you back from so much if you don't establish credit when you're younger. And I think a lot of people just don't do it because they don't want to get in a habit where they do go into that rabbit hole and put themselves in a bad spot financially, where they maybe have credit card debt or, have a really low credit score. So I think that that's so important and starting out in your life, but you have to be able to maintain or have discipline in a sense of what you're buying, because I feel like when you're younger, when you're in your teen years versus 20 versus 30, what you're buying is going to look so different.
Yeah.
But being able to have control over that during all stages of your life is so important.
Yeah. And not to stray too far from, the money and like how it impacts a relationship, but it's a good point that you make about, having good credit and how that impacts your relationship and, the practical things that it means, like you already mentioned, like when you want to buy a house or a car or, things that involve credit. But I had another thought about money. It's like, how have we managed our money
I think,
up to this point?
yeah, I think previously we obviously have separate accounts.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
apparent. So then when we get married, we do want to join our accounts together.
Yep.
But I think up until this point, we've just had the conversation since we split rent and we split, obviously utilities fall under rent, but since we split all of that, we've sat down and had the conversation, what are things that we're paying for and what is the extra money that we have. But I think it's so hard to actually see the full picture because we aren't combined yet, where it's like, we just sit, it's like hypothetical. It's like, okay, I have X amount, I've spent X amount. And then we both are kind of like you'll be like, oh, I'll pick up dinner tonight on the way home, or I'll go and pick it up. So I think it's so hard to like have a good representation of the actual money that we both are making collectively. But up until this point, I'd say we're separate. And now we've started to combine now that we live in the same spot.
Yeah. And I think what has worked for us is that we're open with how much money we have, like what we're paying for, and realizing where we at on a monthly basis, where we're like, okay, I had this expense that was more than I expected. Okay, let's shift to, how we approach buying our groceries.
Yeah.
And
I do just want to interject for a second too, which I think is so important, which people can get caught in this trap. When you're younger, whether you had a lifestyle where your parents gave you everything or you grew up in a very comfortable position, I feel like sometimes that sets the expectations of where you want to be, but there's nothing wrong if you aren't at that stage in your life.
A really good point.
Because I feel like when you were younger, you may have had, the newest phone, the newest bag, the newest shoes, but as you get older, you realize that's not financially doable, so you start to change your habits of spending. But I think that that's so important to understand that you don't always have to maintain that, and it's not doable for everybody anyway. So really understanding what that looks like and what you can afford. I think that we're really good at that, like understanding where we're at financially and what we can afford now versus maybe what we would want or want in the future. It's just
we're very realistic on what we have now and what we can afford now, and then also, I guess, simultaneously thinking ahead into the future on what we do want and what we want our lives to look like. So you're operating in the here and now, but then at the same time, you're also operating for the future. And I think that, I know this, like it takes a lot of communication from you and I to have that sense of where we're at and where we want to be. So I think all in all, with money, it's like anything in a relationship, whether you're dating, whether you're engaged, whether you're married. I think it's just having that open line of communication where you're honest with what you both have, or like what you both have together as a couple, and just having goals, like you set boundaries, you have expectations on where you're at now and where you want to be. So
I think that actually money is out of the big three for today. I think that money is probably the easiest one to talk about, if I had to say, because the other ones maybe cause a little bit more issue in a relationship. But I would say for the most part, money should be something that isn't going to cause issues as long as you're open and honest about it.
Yeah.
Especially if you do want to join your accounts. I feel like, in today's world, everyone kind of does their own thing. So depending on your approach and where you want to be at with your spouse, but again, that's just the approach that we're taking. So the second portion that we're going to get into, or the number 2 out of the big 3, is politics. And let's preface this by saying that Caulin is extremely into politics, and I am extremely removed from politics. Not in a sense that I don't like to know what's going on, but I just get triggered. Like if I see something that annoys me or makes me mad, then it just pisses me off, where I just don't even want to be involved. But I like to be in tune, but not to a degree where it's going to ruin my day. Like you will come into the
Only
bedroom
sometimes.
like, I'm so pissed off today, that made me so mad, I hate this, I want to speak out on this. So I think that there's like a fine line, but I hear most of it from you, and then obviously on my own too. But I think that like we're so polar opposite on that end, even though we have the same viewpoint, but I don't necessarily voice it, and I'm not as vocal as you are.
Yeah, and you're not immersed in it like I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think...
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that the reason why I'm really into politics is because I care about... Why?
Because you care about the future of our kids.
Yes.
You always say that you want to be prepared, so you know how to handle situations for when they grow up and when they're in certain situations. I know one of example that you always give.
Well,
but I won't get into that.
Yeah. No. I mean, if you want to.
No, I'm not going to jump into that yet until we start talking about a little bit more.
Well, I was going to say that no matter what, politics do affect our lives, whether you like that or not, they do. So I've just taken the stance of, okay, I'm going to be immersed in it, understand what's going on, so I know how to react and plan for our future. And, like you got to pay your taxes, and there's things that affect the schools, and then there's things that affect work, and policies that affect your job, and, where you buy a house and all that stuff. So whether you like it or not, politics do impact a relationship.
I mean, across the board, not just politics in the sense of which way do you lean.
Yeah, like who do you vote for? Or
not even that. Like there's work politics. There's politics to every aspect of life, but specifically looking at which way do you lean when it comes to voting for a president. And I think that is so important. And those are just our own thoughts or like how we approach it. But I think looking at it from a relationship lens on how do other people approach it. And if I think like speaking of the big 3, our goal was to talk about if being on completely opposite ends is something that you can make, or something that would make a relationship fail, or it's something that you can work through. Yeah.
Are you asking me if that's...
like what are your thoughts? Do you feel like... Because I feel like people are quick to be like, oh, it doesn't matter, push it aside, or I know you have your thoughts and I know I have mine, but we won't really discuss it. But as you notice, as you go through your life and then you bring children into the world, and as you try to raise your children, having different views in specific areas of life, specifically politics, can change or can alter how you raise your children. So do you think that is something that is something that you can work through with a partner, or is that something that should be a red flag, like this person isn't going to be your person?
I mean, I think if it's your... this is tough. So, I mean, I'm lucky because I have you, and, we come from pretty similar political viewpoints, so it's easier for us to get along in that sense. But I'm trying to imagine if you were on the other side. I
feel like if we were opposite, like I feel like all of our discussions, because of like who we are, they would be debates.
Yeah.
And we don't even debate things, but I feel like we love to talk about like our
Well, we're
thoughts
very
on
strong
things.
in
So,
what we
well,
believe.
yeah, and I feel
Yeah.
like if we talked about like opposite ends, like if I was so strong headed in a sense of like I believed whatever it is, like I believe this one thing and you believe the other, I feel like we would just keep clashing, like no matter what it was. Because say we had kids and you're like, okay, you know, you should be like accepting of this, and I'm like, heck no, that's not something that we should be teaching our children or like telling them that this is okay. So then I feel like that just causes an issue.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think your spiritual, religious journey plays into your politics as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's things in the Bible that they coincide with how I view politics and how, say I vote, or, the policies that I believe are the right policies.
Mm-hmm.
So us having the same spiritual beliefs and religious beliefs are, it plays into how I view politics and how we view politics. So it's easier. I'm trying to think of things that work for us, but
let's just come up with an example of something that like would be completely opposite ends in the spectrum, and maybe like an example of someone that like supports whatever it is, and then someone that supports something else. Like, how would you navigate that situation? Like, say if every year I was like, I'm gonna march in the Pride Parade, and then you were like, you won't catch me dead at the Pride Parade. Then like, how do you talk through that? Or like, what is that for someone that's in that situation? Like, how do you communicate that, and how do you work through that? And like, is that going to be an issue long term?
yes.
You think so?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Well, and I think too, like as you
Whether
get,
you try your hardest to make it work, I think it will be an issue. Yeah, long term.
No, and I agree.
I'm honest.
Yeah. No, I think that you like it's just a simple yes. I mean, from what I've seen and what I've witnessed and know, and same for you, I think that you can see long term, maybe necessarily it won't play out in your favor. The here and now, it's easier to deal with, but if you think long term, what is that going to look like? I think that plays such a huge part in who you, but because if you think about it too, like look at it from a perspective of, say it's just you and I in a relationship, which is, a relationship's for two people. But think about like if I brought you to my family, or you had me over for dinner and I was with your family, and you are all leaning one side and I was on the other, and like how that would be. Like, I feel like that would just be so uncomfortable all the time. You know what I mean? I always wonder how people would navigate that, because a lot of the times couples like totally avoid it. They're like, everything's on the table at family dinner, but don't talk about like sports, politics, and whatever else, stuff like that. So it's like, I feel like that's one thing where it's like a deal breaker in a relationship.
Yeah, I think it's like I said earlier, whether you like it or not, politics are in everyone's lives, and to have someone who has the same political views as you, I think is important, and it's worth finding the right person like that who.
I think we should ask a question to the audience and say, what do you value, or what do you think is the most important, or what do you think is like a negotiable? Because I feel like for us, it's probably hard to debate it because we already are on the same page, whereas like somebody else coming from a different perspective may give us different feedback.
Yeah. If you're out there and you're listening or watching and you are in a relationship where your politics are a little bit different or a lot, how do you navigate it? Honestly, like leave a comment on the video or on our Instagram or something. Like, we would love to know. It's because it's hard for me to imagine being with someone who does not share the same political views as me, or even close to mine. I mean, we're not 100% matched, but we're close, but opposite ends of the spectrum would be extremely difficult to navigate. So I'm really curious.
Other than that, I think we're down to number 3, which is
religion. So is religion important? And we have a pretty unique, I guess, story of religion. And I mean, really quick, I grew up in a pretty strong Christian household, church every Sunday, youth groups, being involved with the church. My parents were both heavily involved in the church as leaders and influencers within the church ever since I was little. So that's kind of my background, and yours is not so much.
Mine's the Creasters, and
yeah, the
where you go to
Creasters.
church on Christmas and Easter. But my mom grew up, her parents were extremely religious, and my dad's parents weren't. And we just grew up in different kind of households. Like, I feel like that wasn't like, I don't know, it just looked different from both perspective of like you going to church weekly, and I just didn't. But I think that was like something going into our relationship that played a huge factor, because I would always ask you questions like, what are your thoughts on this? Or like, what is your viewpoint here? And I think that was like the best way to approach it, because I feel like since you worked at the church for a couple of years, I know you would always get the question like, like what if Paris doesn't believe in God, or what if Paris doesn't share similar beliefs? Like, is that make or break for your relationship?
Yeah, or like, where is she on her walk with Christ? Or, I was asked often, and I think it was out of a genuine care for me. I was one of them working at a church, so marriage is important,
and that goes back to the equally yoked. Yeah, and I think that especially you hear that bounced around a lot in a church setting. So I think too that was probably from, like you said, coming from a perspective of we care about you and what does your future hold. But I think that ultimately it ended up like we got to a point where we were go ahead.
No, I know what. Well, so I interrupt you just to say, because I think I know where you're going with that. My view was always, yes, I grew up in a Christian household, and I know how to read the Bible, and I know how to pray, and know how to attend church and be involved in all that. And my stance with you was always not to push anything on you, but always be there ready to answer any questions.
Oh yeah, you always said
had.
that from the beginning.
Yeah, so.
But I think for us too, like, it was always kind of weird, because it was like innately we did share similar beliefs, and I did feel the same way without saying. And as we would talk through things, and as we would go to church or we would watch church online, it was like we did have the same beliefs, but I necessarily wasn't one that like was just out like forthright with saying, okay, this is my belief and this is like who I am. And then I think as I got more comfortable in who I was, then it was like I got to a stage where I was like, okay, I'm proud to be who I am now. But I think before I was just kind of like not sure, not in a sense of like even
you were exploring.
Exploring.
Yeah, right. And everyone, including myself, we all go through at least one phase in life where you're just exploring. And
I mean, I think that you hear a lot of stories of people that even grew up in a household where their family they were all Christians, or they all shared a similar belief or came from a similar religion, and then they rebelled against it, and then they went off and eventually came back to it, or whatever. I don't even know. I have another example, but you hear that a lot where it's like people aren't sure, because when you're younger, a lot of people are like, okay, I didn't really have a choice, so they want to explore. So I feel like it's more common that you hear people exploring, or if that just wasn't like normal to you, you're just interested because I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought.
That's okay. I'll reel you back in.
But ultimately I think from a relationship standpoint, I would view this as the second one, where it's like money can be talked about, religion can be talked about. Obviously, politics is probably the hardest, but I think religion can definitely be an area where you can grow closer together. I think that is probably the easiest one in a sense of growing together. And really leaning on each other, especially whether it's good times or bad times. I feel like when you have a common ground or a good foundation, that it makes your relationship easier, because if you don't have that foundation, then you're almost like tugging against each other, where once you've developed that, I think that it just makes it easier for you moving forward in life on a daily basis, a monthly basis, like whatever that is. So I think that that's really important too.
Yeah. And I think, no matter what religion you follow and all of that, I think it's, as long as you're walking hand in hand with what you believe, I think everything else is just going to fall into place. And, that was always important to me in a relationship. And I saw that with you early on. So it was easy for me to identify that it was going to be an easier road with you, just because I knew that our values were aligned in a lot of key aspects in life. So,
yeah, but I definitely think like your patience made all the difference, because you weren't someone that was like, if you don't believe in what I believe in, then
yeah, like an ultimatum.
Yeah. Because I feel like a lot of people do approach it that way, where it's like, okay, I believe in God, or I am, like I read the Bible daily, or I'm involved in the church, or whatever it is. And a lot of people are like, if you're not that, then it's just not going to work. Like it's very black or white.
Yeah, and I think I gave you even more patience, because I understood your background and where you came from. So you never really got to be even introduced to the idea of being a Christian or knowing Christ. So it was important for me just to kind of just be there.
I do have to mention too, not to interrupt you, but like church, from how it was when I grew up and how you grew up, like the church that you attended and what I attended with my family looks so different from the modern churches today. Like the music that you would hear would be the complete opposite. Like they would preach
just an organ.
Yeah, like you would the message that was preached,
like a concert.
Yeah, it's just so different now. So that's why I feel like a lot of people actually feel more welcome into a church, because it feels like it doesn't feel as like different as it was before, where it's like now it's like, I don't know. I don't even know how to phrase it, but I just like know the feeling. It's just like so different.
Yeah. There's a modern feel to it, where it just appeals to how things are in today's world. So, yeah, no, I mean, we could probably go into a deeper dive into each one of these if you guys want. I think we wanted to just introduce these three topics of our relationship, oh my word, long day of our relationship to you guys. And then if you guys want us to go into a deeper dive, leave a comment and let us know if you want to hear more.
It's hard to
about the nitty-gritty.
It's hard to put everything into 30 minutes, especially when you're like trying to talk. I feel like you can't even articulate everything you want to say. Like I have thoughts, but I'm like, you're just like bouncing all over the place and you don't know what you want to say next. So I feel like if there's, like you said, an area where maybe they want us to elaborate or talk a little bit more on, we're happy to do that. But I think just like a general overview of these three topics is important. As we said, like trying to think of ideas and what stands out from what fits under our type of genre of podcast that we have. So we had some other ideas, but I think that this was just one that we felt like it was on our hearts to cover today.
Yeah, no, I would agree. So I think that wraps it up for this episode. So we're really trying to keep these episodes to a half hour or less, to keep it rolling. So next week, I think we're going to talk about one of our biggest hurdles that we had to overcome in our relationship. Either next week or the week after.
It's so weird though, like doing this podcast, I feel like we're just like such easygoing people that just love to laugh. And I feel like we're so serious on this podcast that it's so not reflective of who we are on a daily basis. But
I mean, we've laughed a pretty decent amount during these.
I think so too, but I think it's more so like when we play like a game or something. But
this was a little more serious one. But I mean, I have plans, like we can do reactions to things that are going on in pop culture and movies and shows and Instagram reels and all these good things. I have a lot of ideas, but we just want to get the general stuff out of the way. You know, things you guys might be interested in learning about us and how we handle things in a relationship, because we are a relationship podcast. So, yeah. Do not forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, all those good things. I'm working on Rumble, so we're going to get videos up on Rumble if you want to watch there. But other than that,
thanks for tuning into episode 6, and we will see you next time.
We will see you next time. Have a good week, and we will see you next Wednesday. So, later.
Bye.